Now, while we're still on the subject of CSS, let's review CSS purification. This is pretty neat. Of course, there is a Webpack plugin for it. And what this will do is it's going to scan all of your views or all of your HTML files. And then it's going to compare that against your style sheet. And if it finds selectors or classes or IDs that are not represented within the HTML files that it scanned, it will actually strip those out of the style sheet and reduce the size. It's really cool. So let's see how to use it. Well, we can install it. And while that's doing its thing, if we switch back, all of this extract plugin, we've already reviewed that. So the only new thing here is to require Purify CSS plugin and then specify our paths. So let's do that now. Scroll down to our plugins right here, like so. Okay, so now the paths, this is going to be unique to your application. So for example, with a Laravel project, it would be your resources views directory, and you would use a regular expression there. So what glob.sync will do is if you say resources views, something like that, that's going to search through it and return an array of every single file that matches that. So all of those paths will be sent to Purify CSS plugin. It's then going to scan those, compare it against the CSS, and once again, for any selector that is not found in your HTML, it will be stripped from the bundled CSS chunk. Okay, so in our case, we just have index.html, so I'm going to hard code it. But yeah, in real life, you would probably have a directory of views that you want to scan. Okay, so let's switch back. We have to require that, of course. So let's grab that. And also notice, if we're going to use glob, we have to require that one as well. So we'll pull this in like so, and then var glob and require that in. Okay, so that looks good to me. So take a look. We are compiling our Sass, but then extracting that to a dedicated style sheet, and that style sheet will be named whatever the entry file is, so main.css. But along with that process, we're now running it through the Purify CSS plugin. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Right now, here's my Sass file. I have a 1 class and a 2 class. npm run dev. It compiles down. And if we now go into our style sheet, it's blank, which means it's doing its job. Just to prove it to you, we'll comment that out, run it again, and that should generate the 2 classes. So when we bring it back, we don't see anything. And again, that's because it scanned the HTML file. And if we take a look at this, there's no reference to a 1 class or a 2 class. Let's add one on here. Okay, well now when we run it, it will find a 1 class, so it will keep that, but it didn't find 2, so it will strip that one. And of course, if we were to reverse this, like so, we're going to get the opposite end result. Pretty cool. Now, of course, if you're using Laravel, you can use Blade. That's still going to work. You can use layout files. You can extend, have sections. All of that should still work just fine. Just an aside for the Laravel users. Now, 2 quick things. It's not just going to work with classes or IDs. The same will be true for selectors in general. So if we have a div and then a paragraph tag, well, if we have here, div p, color is blue, yeah, that's still going to work. So that selector will exist. We compile it down, and there we go. Let's come back and we'll say class is 1, and now we should have the 2 classes. So it actually works surprisingly well, as you can see right there. Okay, now the final thing I want to show you is if we go to package.json, don't forget that we have a production npm script, but this will seemingly break it. So if we run it, it's done. But if we take a look at our CSS, nope, there's no minification there. We minified the JavaScript, but the CSS was ignored. So let's go back to the plugin documentation, and you'll see some options here. Specifically, we're going to want the minimize section. So should we enable CSS minification here? Okay, so let's add that. We're going to come back to our plugins, and we'll say, so we can set that here. We'll just have to reproduce that. Okay, so we're going to run it again. It compiles, and now we've minified our code. But of course, if we run it in dev mode, it will not do that, as we can see there. Okay, so that's CSS purification in a nutshell.